Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. I am so happy and excited to share that 2 episodes are now approved for continuing education contact hours. Episode 2, an overview of eating disorders and treatment, as well as episode 3, using meditation and Ayurvedic life coaching as tools in your practice. And we are working behind the scenes to get the website finished so you can purchase the courses. In the meantime, head over to lisamustard.com to grab your discount on your first course purchase. That's lisamustard.com, and you will see a sign-up box on the homepage. Today's episode is with Ernesto Segismundo, and he is not your typical psychotherapist. Yes, he's a licensed marriage and family therapist in Southern California, as well as a group practice owner. However, he is also a videographer, conference creator, financial coach, professional connector, and networker. And he loves to help therapists think outside of the typical 4 walls of the therapy room when it comes to pivoting their skill sets to make way for other professional endeavors. And on today's episode, we have an honest and real discussion that explores professional identities and emotional baggage, how to move through burnout, and why taking imperfect action is so important and key. We hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. I am once again excited to have this guest on. His name is Ernesto Segismundo, and he says I have that correct. I got it right.
Yes.
Woo, woo. So proud of myself. And I'm super excited to have him, and I got to give you guys the backstory on how this episode came to be. He and Katie Lemieux, is that correct? Am I saying her?
Yep.
Okay. He interviewed her on a live, and then they turned it into a podcast for the private practice startup. And I just happened upon the episode where the 2 of them were talking about not wanting to be therapists anymore or something like that. And I was like, I got to talk to these 2 people like ASAP, because I was having all the feels that they were discussing and describing. And I got to say, a little bit of guilt and shame started to creep up because as you guys talk about, and if you guys haven't heard that, we'll link that podcast episode in my show notes because I think it's really good. And so when I reached out to Ernesto, I said, I know you don't know me. We don't know where this is going to go, but I would love to have you on the show and share with folks listening what it is that you do, because it's really cool how you are pivoting your skill set and just aligning with your passions. So I'm going to stop talking and let you introduce yourself to our listeners today. So welcome to the show, Ernesto.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this. Just a little bit about me. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Southern California, and I've got a group practice, which means that I've got employees who are therapists who work under me. I'm also a videographer who creates promotional videos specifically for therapists. So I help them with their marketing through promotional videos, putting it on YouTube and their websites. And lately, I've been mentoring other clinicians to help them transition out of the world of mental health into other spheres that they want to get into. Like I'm helping someone who wants to be a office designer for therapists. I go, well, go ahead and do that. Let's try to figure that out. Yeah. So I've also coined the term not your typical psychotherapist, which is basically psychotherapists who are doing things outside of the norm of being a therapist. Some of them are doing real estate stuff. Some of them are doing social media and writing books. They're doing podcasts like you are, right?
Right.
And also exploring things outside of the mental health world box.
Okay.
And just giving everyone permission to go, you know what, if you have an idea, run with it, because sometimes a lot of us who are therapists are not meant to just sit behind 4 walls.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We are meant to be outside, to do things, to be designers, to be creative, to do podcasts, to be on shows, to write books. So I just want to, with my own process, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. With my own process, I've discovered that the more I am a therapist, completely a therapist, the more I am burned out, the more that I don't allow myself to get so creative. And when I'm not creative, I actually get depressed and anxious. And I think many of our your listeners could resonate with that, because the worst thing you could do as a professional is to keep all of your gifts in a bottle.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing that side of you and not apologizing for it. I think that's something that I come across a lot with my peers is almost like we want to apologize that we don't want to do this anymore, or we want to explore other avenues, but what is that about? Can you
Yeah.
what do you think
Yeah.
that's about?
I had no idea so I started the process within 2 years of trying to transition out of the counseling world. What I've learned is that we've got indoctrinated in grad school, starting in grad school, right? We are told that we are only therapists and only therapists.
Yep.
And the more we buy onto that type of narrative, the more we believe it. And so when you're trying to transition to be, let's say, office designer for a therapist, you go, well, my identity is really solidified in being a counselor as a therapist. And so when we come to that point of having those two roads meet, there's all of these emotional baggage that comes up, right? The narratives that come up, the guilt, the shame of, well, I'm really good at this as a therapist, so therefore let me stay within this box.
Right.
And it doesn't help when other people say things like, well, you're such a great therapist, why are you going into this route? Why are you abandoning your license? I'm like, no, that's not what I want to hear right now.
Right.
But the thing is, I really do think as a mental health profession, it's such a sexy profession, right? It's so, we want it, there are times when it's glamorous, and there are times that it's not. And unfortunately, we ascribe our identities to it instead of, that is just a part of me.
Right.
That's just a part of my training. It's not my whole humanness of it, right?
Right.
So I think that's where, you resonate with the emotional turmoil, right? I went through that for about a year and a half,
Yes.
right?
I'm still going through it. So if you guys could see me, I'm like waving my hands up in the air right now because I get that. Yeah. Talk some more about that.
Yeah, so I went through a transition when my group practice and my videography business started exploding, right? And then on the side, I was seeing clients. And when I was sitting with my clients, because I see a lot of couples, when I'm sitting with my couples, they're telling me, we can't do this without you. Thank you so much, Ernesto. You're great. And that plays into the narrative of my identity as a therapist, right? And the more I try to separate myself from the therapy world, the more my clients can sense that I'm separating, I think.
Yeah.
And so the more I hear, or maybe I hear it more like, Ernesto, thank you so much for being our therapist. You changed our lives. And because I'm a recovering people pleaser, I am a recovering codependent, that kind of narrative and talk goes straight to my heart, and the more I try to peel away from that, and I hear that, it goes into, okay, all right, you can't do this without me. I believe it, so therefore I will be a therapist. And then I start denying all of the things that goes on inside of me.
Yeah.
Right. So part of my process is telling myself every day, I am not a therapist. I am Ernesto. Therapist is what I do on the side. It is part of my gift. It's part of my profession, but it does not make up my whole complexity as a human being.
Ooh, I like that. I'm going to wake up in the morning and say that to myself. I am not a therapist. I am Lisa. I love it. Thank you. That is, sometimes we just have to say it out loud to really, take it in and process it and like let it, marinate on our brains. And then eventually we start taking those actions to prove to ourselves that we're more than just a therapist. And I agree with you. Like, there's a reason I got into this work. There's a reason that therapy called to me, and I explore that a lot in my own counseling when I go and I'm talking to my therapist. So I think that's really important. Did you recognize, people pleaser, codependency, all
Oh
this?
my gosh. And I'm glad that you mentioned seeing a therapist, because my therapist even helped me seeing that I'm not a therapist. It is the weirdest. He's like, no, you're not a therapist. You're Ernesto. And
Yeah.
I was like, for the longest time, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, but I am a therapist. Like, you don't get it.
Mhm.
You're putting too much of that title. And you see this a lot when people write their names on their business cards. You see the MFT, you see the PsyD, you see the doctorate. You see all these damn initials that people don't even care about, right? All they care about is you as a human being. Can you help me with my pain? And I thought to myself, that's right. So
Mhm.
every time I introduce you can even see this and understand this when you go to a networking event, and it's almost as if everybody's wanting up each other.
Mhm.
It's like, well, I did this work for this many years, and then you go around in circle and they talk about their thing, and they go, well, I had 20 years of experience. I have this much experience, and I've got all these titles right behind me. I'm like, you know what? I don't care about that. Just tell
Right.
me who you are.
Right. Yeah. I know, because that's really at the end of the day, we're humans connecting with each other and building. Yeah, I mean, you're speaking my language, and I'm so glad that we connected. I mean, this is just so powerful, and
Yeah.
I don't want this episode to turn into, something like I'm done with being a therapist. I'm moving on.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
I don't, and that's not the goal of this by any means. I just want folks to know that I didn't talk about this on some of my episodes. I just been going through a lot of burnout the past 18 months. And so when I was able to hear you and Katie talk, and I just totally connected with y'all, and it was like I found my people. I found my people because I have really struggled over the past 2 years with my peer group and
Mm,
admitting I don't want to do this anymore. And then when your day job pays the bills and that's what you do, you feel this guilt, you feel this shame, you feel this like, well, how do I move now? How do I pivot? How do I grow out of that?
right.
So for me, that was discovering, let me use my skill sets for the podcast. And so for the people that you're working with, it sounds like you're really helping them identify what lights them up, what's the creative side of them, what brings them joy, and still staying within the world, a lot of them, of this profession, which I think is super cool that
Absolutely.
we have these mediums to now get out and help people across the world, social media and technology. So if somebody were to come to you and they just say, hey, Ernesto, I'm just burnt out, like, what would you suggest to them? What are some tips
Oh,
to help them kind of move through that?
oh my gosh. First thing is to separate your identity
Mm-hmm.
and just be at the core level of being a human being. Like I said, I'm really big on names. In my culture, I'm Filipino,
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up in Hawaii, and names are huge. There's actually power in your name. So if you say, I'm a therapist and my name is Ernesto, you've already lost the identity battle. You have to say, I'm Ernesto, who happens to be a therapist. So you put your actual name, your spiritual name, your family of origin name at the forefront of your identity, because that stands for who you are as a human being, your culture, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
That means a lot. It's a powerful narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And then you ascribe on the bottom, says, I'm a videographer. I happen to be a therapist as well. I'm also a podcaster. I do all these other things, but my name, and don't forget it, my name is Ernesto.
Mm-hmm.
When I tell people that, it's freeing, right? Because it gives them permission to do other things other than I'm Ernesto first, but under my name brand, I am this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to do that. And once I give them that backward, or actually the actual way to identify yourself, the more free they become, the more enhanced they become as a therapist. They're like, oh my gosh, that's right. And they get excited about being a therapist, and they do more of it because it's not part of their identity. It's what they do,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the more you do that, you give yourself first, the more you do all these other things, and you get so excited about it and do more of it. And I love what you said, that this show is not about helping or encouraging anyone to get out of their profession. It's not that. It's actually being aware of the guilt and shame that you feel if you want to transition out. And if so, if you want to do some other things, there is no apologizing.
Right.
Right? You don't have to apologize to anyone. It's all right. I'm done with being a counselor. I think I'm going to do this, and just go along and skip your way through the road.
Right.
right?
Right. Yes, we're skipping. It's so much fun. We're having so much fun as we learn to skip. I think I had to learn how to skip, to be honest. It had been a while. This episode of The Therapy Show is sponsored by my favorite fitness apparel, Ziya Active. I recently discovered Ziya Active when I went looking for high quality and premium workout clothes. Just like those luxury store and catalog brands, yet I wanted a budget-friendlier price tag. I love this brand because number one, I live a very active lifestyle. I hit the gym about 5 days a week, plus I love to go for runs and long walks, which I consider to be my very important self-care and podcast listening time. Plus, the endorphins I get from my workouts keep me in my happy mental space. The clothes stay put, I'm not constantly pulling on my leggings or tugging on my sports bras, and they accentuate me in all the right places. And number two, when I work from home, I love to be comfortable in leggings, also known as yoga pants, and a tank top. Plus, I can transition to running out the door to pick up our girls or run errands while still looking put together in my athleisure styles. My favorite workout leggings are the light and tights, and my favorite everyday wear are the everywhere pants. I literally wear them everywhere, every day. I can even wear them to business meetings or client consultations. I can dress them up or down easily. Want to learn more? Head over to lisamustard.com and click on the Activewear page. You can learn all about Ziya Active, the mission, the clothes, and see if they are a fit for you and your active life. From weight training to running to Zumba to yoga to CrossFit to bar to walking to tennis, Ziya Active has you covered. And don't forget about the active men in your life. They have an amazing men's line, plus clothes for active kids too. That's Ziya like papaya active. So see my site for all the details. Okay, so that's a really good, I love that exercise. You know, you're getting people to really identify just as themselves, not as a label. So that's really cool. So what else do you coach people with next? Like what would be the next step?
So the next thing, so for those of your listeners who are trauma specialists will understand this concept. And also for those who are neuropsychologists, there's a thing called neuroplasticity. The only time when you change the certain types of brain patterns or behavioral patterns is to act.
Mm-hmm.
So in the very beginning, step one is to separate your identity from other identities out there that is holding you back. Step two is to act. Okay. The reason why you want to act and you move forward is that you change the neuroplasticity or you change your brain patterns to thinking a certain way. So what that means is if you want to be a designer for a therapist to design their office, right? I would say, all right, now we've separated your certain identities to make your humanness and your name as your primary identity. You can now do it. Mm-hmm. So the acting part is maybe reach out to, I told this person, go ahead and reach out to this therapist who really needs help with decorating her office. And so she hasn't really felt the energy of being a designer for clinicians, right? Mm-hmm. But my thing is, don't wait until the emotion or the feelings to come. You just do it, and then the emotions and feeling will come later.
Right.
Very DBT-ish, right?
Yeah, very. Mm-hmm.
So act. One of my pet peeves is people who keep talking about what they want to do and there's no action.
I know.
Because why? Because I was that person.
Yeah.
So for me as a videographer, I was like, hey, I would love to create promotional videos for therapists. I don't know how to do it. But then again, I went on YouTube, I'm like, oh, I can actually do this. And I went out. My first video was crap, but I kept doing it and doing it and doing it. Now I travel all over the United States. And now I'm going to Italy on Friday to do promotional videos in Italy for therapists who are going to Italy from the United States.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And then, right. So here's the testimony. Stop talking and start acting.
Right. You know, I have a different take on that. This is my husband's been saying this forever. He says, talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. And, you know, growing up, I would hear that all the time. I was like, what does that mean? But I get it now. Talk is cheap. And you got to take action. If you don't take action, you're always going to just be talking. Yeah. And that was me too. I was like, forever, I was going to I'm going to do something different. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then I never really took the action because it didn't I just couldn't get into it. It took
Right,
time to
right.
figure it out. And that's okay. Like taking time to figure it out is okay. So
Yeah.
talk to the people who are doing things that you are dreaming of doing, even if you're unsure if that's the direction you want to go in. Like I would love to talk to somebody. Well, let me take that back. I was just talking to somebody earlier who has a vision of becoming a consultant. And I said, well, you can talk like he was talking and talking and talking. I said, can I give you an action step? Do this. How does that sound? Are you able to
Mm,
do that? Would you be able to do that by next week? So I think we'll see, and I think that
yeah.
just goes to show how serious people are. And it doesn't mean if you don't do it, don't judge it, just kind of process it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You nailed it. Don't judge it
Yeah.
because it is a scary process.
Hmm.
It is learning as you go. So, my style, and this is not for many people, but basically, I jump off a cliff, metaphorically speaking, and I create my wings
Yeah.
on the way down.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know that saying? But you're absolutely right. I think when we try to do big things, the emotion comes up, right?
Hmm.
And we react, not respond to the emotion, and therefore we get paralyzed
Yeah.
and with not moving. And we got to keep moving towards this because it really changed the brain patterns and behaviors. I also do conferences called the Not Your Typical Psychotherapist Summit, and I held one here in Anaheim, and and one in Florida next year.
Oh,
I
cool.
was scared to death to do it, but I did it. And we're talking about this. It's pretty much therapists who are not your typical therapists who want to do other things. And that conference blew up because many people who attended felt the same way. It's not that they're trying to transition out of counseling, but they also want to add things into their gifts, into their repertoire.
Yeah.
So part of the conferences that I do, I wanted to show people how to do it. I wanted to inspire people. And, it's all about the community aspect of it.
Mm.
But basically, you have to act when you're doing something big. You can't just sit down and dream and write this whole elaborative plan. But I can tell you now, you plan it out, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
In the first time, you gotta do things to it, right?
Mhm.
That can perpetuate that, they can help that. So you have to move forward as much as possible.
Yeah. That's really cool. Tell us about the conferences. I'm really curious.
Sure, sure. So there's two conferences that I do. I'm a continuing education provider, and so we did a conference here called Not Your Typical Psychotherapist. I invited a handful of speakers to
Mm.
talk about marketing, to talk about creative marketing, to talk about finances, all of those things. And so basically, it's 2.5 days of this training for clinicians to help their finances, to run private practices, to hire, to do leadership, all of those things. So they attend and they can get up to 16 CEs
Mm.
for this. So we sold out on the one in Anaheim this year, and I'm hosting one in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale next year with keynote speaker Mike Michalowicz. I don't know if you know who Mike Michalowicz is.
Mm.
He wrote Profit First,
Oh,
and he
okay.
also wrote the book Clockwork.
Mhm.
So he's my keynote. That one will be focused a lot on creating systems for your business, to doing multiple streams of and passive streams of income, finances as a mental health professional, and also creating a private practice that is profitable for you. So basically, it's all of that in one.
Nice. That sounds exciting. And that's on my side of the country. So I'm in South Carolina. So maybe I will have to come down. That would be so fun. I would love to.
Yeah, yeah. So, and on top of that, I'm people who have written. One thing that I'm adding is, if you're an author, I will give you free access to promoting your book as
Oh,
well.
all right.
There, yes, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh wow. I have a friend. Oh, I need to let her know she is an author, a writer, and she's a psychologist, and I need to let her know. And so if anybody's listening and you've written books, how do we learn more about that conference, I guess would be
Sure, I can send you the link to
okay.
that. Once you guys get the link, there's also a hotel discount code for the Marriott. I mean, for the Hilton there.
Okay, cool.
So should be a lot of fun. Yeah,
That's what are the dates?
sometime in May.
Okay, so it's
It's
next spring.
May.
Yeah, so we got plenty of time to put it into our budgets to make it. That sounds really exciting. So tell us about your videography business and what does that look like? How does that help a therapist? Like what would that do for a therapist?
Yeah, it's the age of social media, right? Many
Mhm.
people are relying, if you look at social media, if you look at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they're all moving towards videos. And
Mhm.
I saw this coming 2014. And I attended a real estate agent's conference and they were doing videos. And I was like, what the heck? There's no therapist here. So I did a promotional video 2014 off of a ugly camera, and it was long. And I did something on parenting, and no joke, I got 8 clients off of that video. And
Wow.
so I thought to myself, I started thinking if therapists had promotional videos on their website, what would that be like?
Mhm.
Google loves videos on website. So they actually rank your website higher in Google on the first page of Google if you have a video on there. So what it looks like for me is that because I'm a therapist, I help people or therapists to create promotional videos. I ask them questions, it's interview style. I ask them questions about their practice, who they're passionate about, and try to bring out their humanness of the therapist and capture that on video. I travel to their offices and to their state, and we talk over the phone about 3 times just to get to get the idea of your practice, but also try to look at your personality and how I, as a videographer, can reflect your personality onto video.
Mhm.
And it's about a 2.5 minute long video. It takes about, no joke, 30 to 40 minutes to create.
Wow.
I go to your office, put beautiful nature scenes in your music. If you go on my website, filmit.com, you'll see all of the samples of videos.
Oh, cool.
So basically, that's it. It's pretty easy. I said I fire you questions about your practice, and then we go from there.
That's really cool. I haven't heard of anybody doing that quite just yet. So that's exciting. And you're going to Italy. How did they find you?
Well, the therapists here in the US, I've got a lot of followers on social media, and they go, "Hey, we're going to Tuscany
Mm.
for a workshop. Can you come along?" I said, "Oh my gosh, absolutely. Oh, and by the way, can you
Mm.
film the workshops and we'll pay you, and it's all tax write-off, right? To
Mhm.
Italy, get that."
Oh.
So we've got 4 days of workshops that I'll be filming, and then the rest of the time that I'm there,
Mhm.
we're visiting all of these beautiful wine country in Tuscany. So yeah, I'm going along and doing videos, and it's a tax write-off.
That's incredible. If you guys need a podcast host, let me
Right.
wow. That's a dream,
But
but
that
that's so
but
cool.
that's but that's it. You just said it.
Mhm.
You just said it. If you guys need a podcaster
Mhm.
in certain areas, please call me. That you just did a call to
Mhm.
action. That is not typical, right?
Mhm.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah, because in the past, I would say, "If you need a marriage and family therapist, call me." And, the energy is so different when I say that versus if you need a podcaster, so I'm very aware of my own stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's fabulous, and I think, your energy shifted too as you were talking about what you're doing with your videography, and your conferences, and I think that's really something special, and I'm excited to see where you guys take I saw an ad come across my feed for the modern day therapist. Is that something
Yep.
you're a part of
Yep.
too? Okay, I saw
Yeah,
that.
I'm speaking there as well.
Okay,
And I'm talking about being authentic as a
okay.
clinician and venturing outside.
That's cool. I wish I could be there for that. But being over here in South Carolina, it's hard to get cross country, but you know what? Eventually it'll be in my budget and I will make it to these events. That's on my list of things to do. Well, so if people want to connect with you and learn more about your services, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Sure. So I'll send you the link
Okay.
of, you can reach me to filmit.com, but
Okay.
I really encourage people to find me on Facebook. A lot of my Facebook activities has a lot to do with business and connecting and networking.
Mhm.
And so I want people to be on my Facebook, and you can get me directly. I do a lot of Facebook lives on how to manage your money, how to explore money issues, how to be the not your typical psychotherapist, and just giving permission to other therapists to do big things
Yeah.
and be afraid, but do it anyway.
Right. I love that. Yeah, be afraid but do it anyway. That's how we grow. That's how we evolve. That's how we build our confidence. I completely
Hmm.
believe that. Well, Ernesto, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been just so fabulous. You breathe so much energy and life and I know I keep saying it, just validating. It's kind of selfish, but you help validate what I'm doing because for so long I
Awesome.
struggled. Yeah, so thank you once again. This has been just great.
And I got to tell you, thank you for your podcast, because we need people to really put the forefront of this type of conversation. And what you're doing right now, you're opening up. And I love your energy too. I mean, if I'm elevating my voice like this, that means, the energy I'm feeding off of your energy. So great job on your podcast. I love it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, gosh, I'd love to have you back in the future. Maybe we'll do it as you get closer to one of your conferences and we can really get into the weeds of what that's going to look like. Something to consider though, I don't know if you guys are doing this. Will you have a live stream into the conference for those who can't make it?
Absolutely,
Okay,
we will.
awesome.
I'm developing the website for that, so you can just go in there and then just watch the live streaming.
Oh, that's so exciting. Thank you. Wow. Awesome. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine. Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content. And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.